We thank Daniel Tran for joining us today from the Prosperous Law Group. We're really excited about the webinar, so we thank him greatly. And the title is What Happens When Getting Paid on Your Construction Job Goes Wrong. I'm the Senior Director of Attorney Services at LevelSet. We're really happy to be putting on more and more of these webinars for you, and we're happy to have great lawyers like David host them. So if you have any questions, please ask them. You can always post questions at the Attorney Network, where attorneys from all over the country and all over your state can answer questions, or you can ask them during the webinar, or of course you can always ask David, and we'll put up all his contact information at the end. So David, thank you so much. We look forward to a great webinar.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon or good morning, folks, depending on where you are. My name is David Tran with Prosperous Law Group. I've been a attorney focusing on construction and construction trade for the better part of 15 plus years. We cut our teeth initially in construction by learning how to reverse engineer, or the forensic of the construction project when it goes wrong. Okay. Today's focus is going to be the various aspects that affects your ability to get paid on a project, or if you're doing the course of your construction, when something goes wrong, these factors are going to arise, and you're going to have to deal with it one way or another. We always advise our client, don't take the first step, the first easy response. Rather, have a little talk with your counsel and sort of plot out all the different scenarios, how an accident or a mishap on the job, what is it going to mean to you? Okay, let's get started. Okay. Right. Like I said, when you're entering into a project and you agree to do work with either a general contractor above you or a subcontractor below you, when you're talking about a project, everything sounds really great. Yeah, we're gonna get in, we're gonna bang this thing out, we're gonna make a lot of money, it's gonna be real simple. That's the kind of talk and the kind of things you expect when you're just beginning to date someone. Everything is rosy. Okay? But just like dating, you have to work at that relationship to keep it pretty, or else, and to keep it from turning into something ugly, or having the project go sideways on you, or worst case, the project, you start losing money on it. So everything, like we say, everything focuses and starts, right, with these 7 factors. Now, you're on a job, you're doing your scope of work, a mishap happens, okay? Somebody does the wrong thing, okay, and then the finger pointing starts to happen. What should be going through your mind? Okay. We determined that these are the 7 ongoing liabilities, or 7 things that most likely is going to affect you. Okay. I'll give you an example. You are hired to pour additional concrete on an existing slab, okay, in order to build a bigger building. Okay. You hire a X-ray guy to go and scan the concrete to see where the existing conduits are, okay? And then you hire another subcontractor to actually go cut the concrete, okay? Right? The scanning company comes in, they may or may have not have done a good job, and they marked it, the location. And then the concrete cutting company comes in, and they may or may not know how to read what the X-ray technician had marked, and they go about cutting the concrete. Lo and behold, they cut to the concrete and they sever a conduit, sever some utility line, some electrical or some low voltage lines in there, and the telecommunications line. Okay, general contractor halts everything, and then the general contractor huddles with the owner, huddles with his team. Okay, and so you're thinking, all right, what's going to happen to me now? So we're going to discuss a little briefly. I'm going to try to touch on a little bit of these things, but some things that you gotta know it's going to come up into play are going to be: are they going to top my bond? Are they going to do chargebacks on me? Are they going to increase my retention? Okay. Is my general liability insurance going to get involved? Okay. Am I going to get in trouble for breach of contract? Okay. And what about my subcontractors, the guys who did the x-raying and the cutting? What can I get out of them? And then what about the general contractor? What's he going to do to me? Those are all the people that are looking at you, okay? You and your company. And they, of course, they want to defer their liability and defray their liability and say, no, it's all you and your responsibility. And you have to manage all of that. All the while, you're still on the job. You haven't been fired. Okay? You haven't been, replaced. And they're looking at you and saying, all right, buddy, what are you going to do about this mess? Okay. So, like I said, everything starts with your contract. Okay. Now, you got to look at the contract between you and the guy above you, the general. And if you have people or subcontractors below you, you got to look at your contract with the people who promise to do things for you. Over the years, we get a lot of those. Oh, I've worked with so-and-so for so many years. We don't even do contracts anymore. We do business on a handshake. Well, that's great between you and the other owner. But when the problem and the dollar amount starts climbing, okay, the other lawyers and other insurance companies, they're going to scrutinize your contract and say, oh, based upon what was in the contract, it's going to be whether or not you're going to have any help with this problem or not. Okay. So you have to have a full understanding of what it is you're signing. If you are fortunate enough to have the general contractor sign your subcontract that you created or you and your team have created, then you have a pretty good understanding what's in there. Okay. But if you are signing a contract that was given to you from your general contractor and you don't have an understanding, a full understanding of what's in there, that is where all the landmines are going to be. Okay. And then also you have to match the contract that was given to you by the general contractor down to you versus your contract that you give down to your subcontractor. If the terms do not match, so you could be promising a lot more to the general contractor, okay, but at the same time, you're not holding your subcontractor's feet to the fire, then any gaps or differences is going to be on you. Okay. So a couple of things I want to talk about that. In the contract, a lot of people say, well, attorney fees clause. You attorneys only want that because it protects your ability to get paid. No, that's not true. An attorney's fees clause in your contract will serve as both a sword and a shield. It acts as a shield to prevent people from making, spurious claims or like really weak claims against you, because if they make that claim against you and they're wrong, they could potentially be stuck having to pay your attorney's fees, all right? If they have a valid claim against you, they won't care about that because they know, right? Hey, squarely, you were at fault, you were wrong, yeah, you caused this accident. If if we have to pursue you, you would have to pay our attorney's fees. Okay, that is their sword against you. But the attorney's fees clause is also a shield for you, in that if they come at you for work that you didn't cause or damage that you clearly didn't cause, you can say, look, you're chasing me for some bogus claim. If I have to prove myself and prove that I didn't do it and that I would no way the cause of this problem, then you, claimant, may be responsible for having to pay all my attorney's fees. So if the attorney's fees acts as a reasonable deterrent against crazy claims, right? Next issue I want to talk about is, let's see. Nope, there's that. Sorry. The chargebacks. Well, chargebacks, you hear that a lot. First time anything goes wrong, well, I'm going to hold that, I'm going to take that out of your contract, right? And you hear that so often that people forget to check, are chargebacks even allowed in the contract? Now, if you're dealing with a pretty sophisticated general contractor doing a multi-million-dollar project, chances are there's going to be a big section on chargebacks, what are required for chargebacks, right? Versus if you're doing a small commercial job for like $50,000 for a general contractor and a local general contractor, he may not even have chargebacks in his contract. Now, why am I talking about all this? Because chargebacks are predominantly creatures that only exist within the contract. So if the contract that you're working on doesn't have chargebacks requirements or details what happened during chargebacks, then you can say, hey, it's not in there, it doesn't exist. So you don't have the right to hold back or charge me back monies. You can make claims against my insurance or whatever, but you don't have the right to hold up my money. Okay. If the general contractor tells you, oh, but I'm going to do it anyways because I can. Well, you have some options, and I would suggest you go to the Level Set Education Center. They have a lot of articles and videos regarding chargebacks, and they'll give you a primer on what's available to you. Okay. But predominantly, you would expect to see chargebacks on issues like, if you had to use someone else's equipment longer than necessary in order to complete your work, okay, caused by your mistakes, that could be an element of chargeback. Or if you do incomplete or incorrect workmanship that delays a project or causes someone else having to come in and fix your mistakes, that is very much a opportunity for the general to charge you back. Okay. Now, same. When you're working with your subcontractors below you, it's important to have chargebacks in your subcontract so that you can turn around and charge them, the subcontractors, for any mistakes and things that they did. Okay. In the example that we gave you about the concrete cutting, right? Let's say, the concrete cutter, right? In his zeal of cutting concrete, sparks, the sparks come flying, and it catches something on fire. Fire extinguisher comes down and soaks up the place, and preventing anybody from doing any cleanup or repair for a while. Now, those delays, okay, you can potentially come back and charge the subcontractor who doing the concrete cutting is like, hey, you caused this. You caused everyone above me time and material, and then we've lost days on the job, and we have to expend additional man hours to clean up this mess. So I'm gonna deduct that amount from my contract with you, okay? If you got a problem with it, go talk to your lawyer and we can deal with it later. But for now, I have to spend X amount of dollars to fix your mistake. Therefore, I'm going to hold on or deduct that money from your account. Okay. Now, okay. The next issue that's related to that are retention. Let's talk a little bit about, I don't want to go too deep into retention because I know this subject has been discussed in ad nauseum. But
real quick, David, not to interrupt, but I just wanted to let everyone out there know that if anyone has any questions, we're kind of at the halfway point. So feel free to ask them now, or we'll save a few minutes for later. But thank you, David. Keep going. We're enjoying.
Okay, right retention. Something really quick. There's no limits in private works, at least in California. There's no limits on how much retention you can initially set. Okay, but let's use the example of the concrete accident. If we determine that the general decide, hey, because of the fire that arose from the concrete cutter's work, we anticipate damages and having to fix that area. It's going to take X amount of dollars. So the general can say, I have the right to hold 150% of the cost or the value of that fix, okay, just to make sure that we have enough money to resolve that problem. So if they estimate the fix to be $20,000, and they can hold up to $30,000, right? Just for as long as it takes for them to fully pay off all the bill and make all the fix. Okay. Now, what does that mean to you? If your contract was $50,000 and the general hold back 30, you're already losing on the thing. You're done. Okay. So you better make sure that your subcontract agreement with your subcontractors have a similar retention rights or ability to hold back or the ability to go after the insurance or something else. Because you've got to find a solution for it, because otherwise you're going to take a big hit on it. Okay. But as soon as the owner, as soon as you do all the repairs and you fix everything, and you tell the general contractor, don't worry, I'll take care of this whole thing. It won't cost you $1 out of your pocket. And you actually do make all the repairs. Okay. Once those repairs are accepted by the owners, there's a time limitation on when they have to go ahead and release the payments to you. Okay. Each state may have different requirements, but in California, what you see here are the time frame upon which someone has to release the money once the work has been accepted. Okay, so I don't want to go too much into that, but more importantly, getting back to your contracts. Okay, right? You have to manage and understand what promised between the owner and the general. Okay. And then you have to understand what the agreement is between the general contractor and you. And then you also have to fully understand and manage the agreement between you and your sub-sub. Sometimes our clients will come up to us and say, hey, I don't really pay attention. I'm just glad to get work from general, so I sign whatever contract that they give me. Okay, but at the same time, I don't really have a subcontract agreement with my subs, and I sign whatever invoice that they give me or a quote proposal that they give me. Okay. That works well, and that situation works fine if you never ever intend to get into any kind of dispute. If all of your projects work 100% all the time, and there's never any mistakes or ambiguities, if that is your reality, if that is your world, then great for you. But I've never seen that. I've never seen a project go so smooth that no one ever disputes contract terms. Then again, if everything worked perfectly, I would be out of a job. So that situation doesn't arise too much in my world. Okay. Now, let's talk about the same issues. Again, we're going to use the same scenario: concrete cutter, uses and power tool, spark flying, burns, and the fire catches on something flammable, causes a minimal amount of fire. Okay, and the concrete cutter also accidentally cuts through a conduit and cuts through other people's work. Now, would your general liability insurance step in? Okay. Given the fact scenario that we just gave you, it makes sense that general liability would step in. General liability is that $10,000, $20,000 or $30,000 or more cost that you have every year to buy insurance to protect you against this very thing. Now, its job is to protect you, but it is not there to protect against your lack of workmanship or your incorrect or incomplete workmanship. What does that mean? Okay, if you are pouring concrete and you pour it to the wrong degree of thickness or density or PSI, that's bad workmanship. Okay, but if you pour concrete and the way you pour concrete damages other components of the structure, such as if you collapse a conduit or whatever, then that causes what's called resulting damage or damage to someone else's work. Okay, that is an unforeseen circumstance, and that is when general liability insurance would step in. Okay, so in the case of the concrete cutter accidentally cutting a conduit, the insurance company would most likely interpret that as being partially covered and partially non-covered work. What is not covered is, hey, I'm not going to pay for concrete that the concrete cutter cut wrong, because that is a function of his work and he did it badly. I'm not here to guarantee that he does good work. I'm only here to guarantee that he doesn't cause damage to other people. Now, damage to other people is, work that's within the conduit, the dry utility line, the electrical line, the low voltage line, the telecommunication line. That one done by someone else other than a concrete cutter. So the concrete cutter inadvertent mistake of damaging those other people's work, okay, the insurance company would come in and say, all right, we will cover the cost of replacing the lines, fixing the conduit, and rerunning the line and buy new lines because that was damage that was caused resulting from the concrete cutter's mistake. Okay, that's all. Okay, so the question that you have to think about on the general liability insurance is, okay, do I have enough insurance? Okay, typically when you're buying general liability insurance, you're buying 1 million, 2 million aggregate. meaning they'll post up to $1 million worth of protection. So hopefully to repair and replace the conduit and the utility lines and so on would cost less than $1 million. If it is, great, that's more than enough money to cover it. Okay. Now, what happens if the damage it costs more than $1 million? Okay. The insurance company, they're not obligated to put up any more other than what they promise. So they only promise you $1 million, that's all they're gonna pay. Anything above that, you're on your own. Okay. So if the damage is more than $1 million, then everyone is scrambling to try to find additional monies to cover it. If they don't have additional or more than enough money to cover it, then they're looking at you, okay, the concrete cutter, and they're also looking at the guy who hired the concrete cutter, and also maybe the general contractor above him. Okay. That's when everybody's insurance starts fighting with each other, and they say, well, no, what's covered, what's not covered. Now, I'll get into that in a little bit. Okay. Now, again, all it takes is to trigger insurance is for someone to say, hey, so-and-so's work caused damage to my work or some pre-existing part of the structure, okay? And so that is usually enough of a trigger to get general liability to start investigating and saying, okay, there's potential for coverage here. Now, what does that mean to you? If the insurance is going to come in and they're going to pay for some of the repair, some of the costs, then the general contractor and the owner might say, all right, if there's a revenue source that's going to come in and pay for that, then I won't hold it against you out of your contract. Okay. A couple of distinctions. When you're talking about insurance, there's coverage for what is called ongoing operation versus completed operation. There's a huge distinction. Ongoing operation is when, for example, there's boots on the ground. The project is not complete yet. There's still work going on, and there's going to be perhaps multiple trades doing work later on. Okay, there's no notice of completion or certificate of occupancy or whatever else because the project hasn't been fully complete yet. All right. Anything that happens during that time frame, from the time you start until the time you get a notice of occupancy or certificate of completion, thing is categorized under what's called ongoing operations. Okay, and then once there's a notice of completion or a certificate of occupancy, then we start looking at what's called completed operation. Okay, the reason there's a distinction for that. Insurance company want to be able to categorize risk. Okay, when there's a bunch of people running around working on a project, on a building, there's a high potential of personal injury and property damage because there's so many moving parts going on at the same time. So during that time frame, they go, look, there's a lot of things that could potentially happen. You know, it's not unheard of for nails and bolts to drop from the third story down and hit some guy in the head, right? Or, or a window pane falling and breaking glass during the construction. So there's a huge potential for risk during the construction phase. Once construction is over and everybody's pretty much gone out of the building, and there's less likelihood of that kind of a risk. So that's why it enters what's called the completed operation phase. Okay. Now, okay, when you submit a claim or someone submits a claim to the insurance company, they're going to try to weasel them away out. Because they're bad people? No, it's because they have an interest in only paying out as minimal as they can, because it's a business. Okay, whatever they promise, they will do. They're obligated to do, but whatever they exclude and expressly say, no, I'm not covering you for this. Okay, then they're not required to do. So if you submit a claim, for example, let's just say that the concrete cutter cuts through the line and then it damages the conduit. So if you try to submit an insurance claim to his insurance company, then his insurance company will say, "Oh, that looks like we might cover it, but there are some exclusions, and the typical exclusion would be they're typically called J1 through J6. A J4 exclusion would be, we exclude anything that's in the care, custody, and control or supervision of this person, the guy who was hired to do the work." So if it is a part of the work that he was supposed to be doing and he didn't do it, then I'm sorry, we can't cover for that, because that's just another way of saying he wasn't doing good workmanship. Okay, and we're not here to indemnify or protect against poor workmanship. We're only here to cover any damage beyond that or resulting from that. Okay, that term, exclusion, care, custody, and control and supervision, well, it depends who argues it. If I'm the general contractor or the subcontractor whose sub made the mistake, okay, the work that he did could arguably be under my control and supervision, right? So therefore, the insurance company might say, "Hey, well, you were supposed to be there to supervise and you didn't do it, and so that's really negligent on your part, okay, to work on that particular area of concrete, and you didn't do it, you didn't supervise it. Why should we pay for your mistake?" So that's a typical exclusion that the insurance would throw out. Okay, next, they would argue typically a J5 exclusion. Okay, if you were hired to cut this particular concrete, feet, 8 feet by 8 feet, and you didn't do it correctly, right? And in doing work on that particular piece of concrete and you messed up, right? We're not paying for that, because you were supposed to do it right and you didn't do it right, and that's really on you. So general liability insurance, our job isn't to protect that. That's on you. Well, that's one way of looking at it. If you hire an attorney, he would spin that around and think, "Hey, my client was hired to do this particular, concrete piece, 8 feet by 8 feet, but the damage to the conduit was way beyond the 8 feet by 8 feet. The cutter went to 12 feet before he hit the conduit line. So therefore, we weren't working on that one 8 feet by 8 feet piece. In fact, we were outside of that area, so we were well into an area that wasn't part of our contract. So that's why we believe the insurance company should cover this claim." Okay, so essentially, you're going to have the attorney from the insurance argue one thing, and then the claimant's attorney is going to argue the other, and whichever one can marshal their facts better is going to be the victor, and it's going to determine whether or not there's insurance coverage for that. Okay. The next argument that they might throw it out at you, it's what's called a J6 exclusion. A J6 exclusion, typically known as a faulty workmanship exclusion. Okay, so and it reads like, that particular part of the property damage that was part of your incorrect work caused during the ongoing operation. Okay, that's a pretty broad sounding exclusion. Say, hey, if you are doing that, you are doing your job on that particular piece of the work that you were contracted to do, and the mistake happened during that time frame, right? Then we won't cover you, right? Now, again, that is still subject to interpretation. So, what if the concrete cutter cuts through the conduit, and he cuts through one part that wasn't even discovered until after the project's completed, right? After it's been accepted by the owner, after it's been put to use, and there's people occupying the building. Well, you can turn around and say, look, it might have been a mistake, but it was not discovered during the ongoing operation or during the time of construction. If you can argue that, if you can argue that, then the J6 exclusion may not apply. Okay. So why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because nothing is a foregone conclusion. So whatever one side argues, the other side can argue the opposite. So what does that mean to you? What that means to you is you should really have a good CPA, a good accountant, and a good lawyer who understand construction to help you when this particular problem arises. Okay. That's about what I have for my presentation. So I'm going to open it up for questions, and I apologize for choking on my voice.
That's okay. It was a great presentation, David, and thank you for doing it. I see some people are leaving now, so they must be on the run during this busy day, but we'll wait around for another second and see if anyone has any questions. We'll leave that open for a couple minutes. And again, thank you for joining today. My name's Seth Bloom. I'm Senior Director of Attorney Services at Level Set, and we love putting on these kind of programs for our customers and for lawyers. We also do CLEs, and we get great lawyers like David to participate in those as well. So, and don't forget to go to the Attorney Network and leave a question, ask a question in all 50 states and get a lawyer in your area to answer them. David, I don't think we have any questions coming in, and people can also post those later, or they can contact you directly. David works in the greater Long Beach, Los Angeles area, and I'm sure he'll take some cases outside of that zone. So, so we thank you so much, David, for this, and look forward to working with you in the future with Level Set. And thanks to all our participants today.
All right. Thank you very much, folks.